For like 2,000 years, the Scythians have been these larger-than-life figures, right? Fierce nomadic warriors, masters of gold who just thundered across the Eurasian steppe. But here's the thing. Their story was always told by other people, by their enemies and their neighbors. Well, today, we're going to crack open their secrets, not with shovels and brushes, but with a genetic time machine. Let's dive in.
You see, the ancient Greeks, guys like the physician Hippocrates, they painted a really specific picture of them. This image of red-haired, heavy-set warriors has totally shaped our view for centuries. It's a powerful description that has just echoed through history.
And that, right there, is the million-dollar question. How much of what we thought we knew was actually fact, and how much was just rumor, or exaggeration, or maybe just a big misunderstanding? It is time to put these legends to the test.
Okay, so to even begin to solve this mystery, we've got to wrap our heads around the enigma itself. The Scythians were this dominant force, for sure, but they left no written history of their own. They were, in a way, a people without a voice.
For centuries, our only clues came from two completely different places. On one hand, you've got their incredible artifacts. I mean, look at this stunning, intricate gold work. And on the other, you have accounts from neighbors like the Greeks and Persians. And you gotta ask yourself, right? How reliable is a story when it's only told by outsiders?
So here's a really key point. Scythian was never just one thing. It wasn't a country or a single ethnic group. It's better to think of it as a cultural label, this huge network of tribes who shared a similar lifestyle, that warrior spirit, and all that famous animal-style art. This is absolutely key to understanding the puzzle.
And so their real identity, their family structures, their biological story, it was all locked away in the earth, inside their tombs. But now we finally have the key.
All right, let's go to where the evidence is. We're heading underground, into these burial mounds, or kurgans, that dot the Eurasian steppe. This is where the Scythians buried their dead, and it's where we find the real clues to their lives.
You can't just drop in on the Scythians. To get a read on them, scientists first had to understand their neighborhood. This timeline shows you the sequence of cultures in one specific spot, the Middle Don region of Russia. First you have the catacomb culture, then the Sherbnaya, and then finally the Scythians arrive. This deep history is so important for tracing where they came from genetically.
And this is so important to remember. We're not just talking about data points. These were real people. We have DS93, a high-status man in a massive tomb. Then there's DS45, a guy who clearly lived with chronic pain from a bad shoulder. We have DS1, an older woman who suffered from some kind of metabolic condition. And then DS78, a young woman whose simple burial tells its own quiet story.
Okay, so we've got the context, we've met the people, now it's time to bring out the big guns. Ancient DNA analysis. This is how we can finally hear the stories that these people could never write down for themselves.
So how does this magic actually work? Well, it's a super careful process. Scientists take these tiny samples from bone or teeth. Then they have the painstaking job of piecing together the ancient, shattered strands of DNA. Using some incredible technology, they sequence the whole genetic code. And then, finally, they compare that code to this massive database of other genomes, both ancient and modern, to see where these folks fit into the grand story of humanity.
And the results that came back, wow, they were stunning. The first major revelation just completely flipped our understanding of who the Scythians really were.
So, just like the archaeologists suspected, the DNA basically screamed it. There was no single Scythian genetic profile, not even close. This chart shows at least 4 different genetic clusters. You've got the biggest group, the Scythian major, but also these unique groups in the south and in Crimea, and even groups out west who totally adopted Scythian culture, but were genetically very different. It's a mosaic. But then, hiding inside that main group, the Skyle Major, scientists stumbled onto something they never expected to find. A discovery so intimate and so detailed, it feels like reading a family diary that was written in DNA.
Get this, it was a clan, a huge extended family. The DNA analysis revealed parents buried near their children, siblings scattered across different burial mounds. The data also pointed to endogamy, which is the practice of marrying within the group. And maybe the most amazing part, every single male they tested from this clan shared the exact same paternal line, the same Y chromosome. This tells us their whole society was built around these powerful father-to-son family groups.
And now for the main event. With this incredibly detailed genetic picture, we can finally go back to those old Greek accounts and see what actually holds up. This is where science goes head-to-head with the ancient legends.
So what about that famous red hair? Well, the DNA tells a more interesting story. While red hair itself wasn't universal, an astonishing 93% of the Scythians carried a gene that is strongly linked to blue eyes and light-colored hair. So while Hippocrates might have gotten the exact shade wrong, his general impression of a fair-featured people, yeah, that was absolutely spot on.
Okay, this one is just incredible. The Greeks always noted that the Scythians lived on meat and milk. Well, the geneticists found a common mutation that causes hereditary fructose intolerance. For people with this condition, sugars from things like fruit or honey are basically poison. So a diet of meat and milk wasn't just a cultural choice. For a lot of Scythians, it was a biological requirement to just stay healthy.
And what about that fleshy and thick physique? The DNA showed a common mutation in a gene called HFE, which can make the body store way too much iron. Now, if you're eating a diet packed with red meat, this condition can lead to exactly the kind of metabolic problems and physical traits that Hippocrates described. The legends, it turns out, had a real basis in biology.
So the Scythians as a culture, they eventually just vanished from the stage of history. But did they really disappear? Or do they live on, just in a different way?
Turns out their genetic story is very much alive and well. The study found that the people who share the most ancestry with them today are modern Northern Europeans, with Lithuanians showing a really strong link. And that fructose intolerance gene, it's still present in modern Europeans, traced all the way back to a common ancestor who lived right around the time the Scythians were first rising to power.
And this is just the most profound takeaway, isn't it? Cultures, empires, they can fade. Names can be forgotten, but the genetic code, that's a story that just keeps being told, passed down through countless generations.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. Here it is, a quote straight from the study itself, confirming this incredible persistence. Their genetic signature didn't vanish, it just migrated and mixed, becoming part of the very bedrock of later European populations.
So, in the end, the Scythians weren't voiceless at all, were they? Their story was there the whole time, just waiting for a technology powerful enough to finally read it. And it really makes you wonder, what other lost histories, what other ancient mysteries are buried in our own DNA, just waiting for us to ask the right questions?